Thank you very much. The presenter has been able to tell us most of the problems associated with these materials, but I want to look at all this from the perspectives of what we call the Nigerian factor. The Nigerian factor brought about all these deficiencies, to be very candid. We need to be able to diagnose what is Nigerian factor. We do also know that moisture is the vehicle for most of these deteriorations, especially in concrete, in timber, and some other materials too. We should be able to conduct appropriate tests on confirming the moisture content, the quality of those particular materials in which the presenter made mention of. The other thing is that when we use mixed design for our concrete, it helps to negate the problem of the volume of concrete, because what we don't normally do is to either use mixed design or the mixed proportion. When we base our design, I mean the concreting, on mixed, on proportioning of the aggregate, not mixed design, which has to do with the weight, then we may run into problems. So I will advise that by the time we use mixed design, we may be able to run away from this. We also know that the cement we are using currently, they are blended cement. Thank you. They are blended cement. It is not pure Portlander cement. And the design of these concrete is based on the Portlander cement and not the blended cement. And if we keep using blended cement and using applying BA standard to design the concrete strength, definitely we will have lower strength. So the need for us to now come up with our own code. My fellow man talked about a code, but those codes are not based on the blended cement we have. We need to look at that. The presenter really tried. He looked at some other problems like the flagging of materials on site, randomly testing the strength of concrete blocks, and on site, okay, in the laboratory. But what of on the site? How do we test the strength of these blocks? We need to be able to develop, although there are ways of testing that too as well, which can be adopted. And with that, we may be able to run away from this building collapse, as the case may be. Collaboration with professional bodies, of which my man here had talked about, is very important in assessing the properties of these materials before use. It is needful that we engage the services of the professional bodies so as to help in checking the properties of this material. Because I talked earlier, make mention of the Nigerian factors. We need to to adopt these people so that these professional bodies to help in assessing these materials. I want to say the presenters, they've done a lot of work. They looked at the materials one after the other, and here proffered solutions, of which if we employ those solutions, or if we use them, we'll be able to get more durable structures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, participants. This paper is a practical paper worth commending. However, there are three central issues that would have made us to understand the paper properly. When a professional builder is participating in the execution of a building project, he has his documents that are binding on him, which they are known as the contract document. Principally among them, for the purpose of standardization, is the specification and the drawings, sometimes the bill of quantities. But what do you find when actually the execution of the project is going on? Is non-compliance. And I think the non-compliance now for a builder is a serious issue. However, supervision and storage of facilities and testing of materials are components that ensure quality of the products we are producing. So that's the buildings. The builder, who is a professional, is expected to ensure that, as the paper stated, all the materials that he uses comply to standards, which are defined in the specification, sometimes in the drawing, sometimes also in other parts of the documents. However, negligence on our part caused us not to perform as expected. The National Building Code, on the other hand, has come to reinforce these contract documents. And unfortunately, there is no law, except for some states in Nigeria, that makes these building code to be enforceable. One other area that is of importance is in the area of the regulatory authorities. Those are the authorities that are involved in the control. They have been defined in the building code. But what do we find if you go to those regulatory bodies, the Urban Development Board? What do you find if you go to the professional bodies? Until recently, of course, Cobon has its own laboratory testing, materials testing laboratory, which, of course, it has not attracted enough patronage or non-patronage at all. Most of us here that are about 50 years and above will remember that in all the ministries of works, there used to exist materials testing laboratories. I wonder how many ministries now have those materials testing laboratories? Zero. And they are supposed to protect public interest. The only place now that you find probably up-to-date materials testing laboratories are the tertiary institutions that are offering those courses. And they themselves, they lack the patronage of the outside world, because they're strictly meant for research and education. The utility boards, on the other side of the coin, they are supposed by the National Building Code and by the old building regulations to monitor production of buildings at every stage, including tests. And at whatever level of development you may be on building site. I wonder how many building inspectors are available in those utility organizations. These are areas probably the paper would have addressed after looking at the practical side applications of this building control. The Standard Organization of Nigeria, the umbrella body for quality control in Nigeria, itself was battling to have a quality policy for Nigeria. I must confess, I must open up, because I was also a member of the committee that represented COBON at one time when that policy was being produced. And I remember at that interaction, I raised strong objection throughout the document of the national quality policy. There was no mention of professional bodies. I think it created a bit of uproar. What I could finally say about the Standard Organization of Nigeria is that before, for every product they are trying to develop or review the standard, they used to invite the professional bodies and then stakeholders involved. But I do not think that now is the order of the day. I asked when I went for that quality meeting, I said, what happened to those product standard committees that used to exist? The complaint was that no funding. So in a situation whereby the social behavior of the society is anti-quality, in a situation whereby the public organizations that are responsible for the oversee of quality do not have the facilities for doing those things, and in a situation whereby produce people who do not have enough knowledge of quality, what do you expect us to have? It is good that the paper recommended 3 options, but I think there is a need for us to go back to the drawing board. We re-strategize and look at quality as a national issue. And in fact, if it is possible, to declare it an emergency situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be brief. Thank you all the speakers and the presenter. Actually, we can understand with the paper that it was looking at the aspect of materials and materials development and application and the standards that are required for such project execution. I'm also aware, which the paper cannot, is only one paper, I cannot say everything, but there's something that is also going on. The professional bodies are being called upon to make input in the construction project management standards. I think there's a committee now that was set up at a kind of a multinational level, and there is now a subcommittee of that national level, of which NROB is okay, of which I am representing COBON in that particular committee. We have met, and I think we were supposed to meet very good. And I don't know, we said you didn't send for us. We called them. We were the ones that not called you. I said, we were supposed to meet tomorrow, but nobody has been informed. So, very good. So it's not that something is not going on. In that meeting, I think there was a lot of argument, and we were trying to look at the standards that were in existence and look at whether there was need for new ones to be developed, or there was also need for the adoption of existing ones and modify or total adoption. And when you look at what was there, some of us now began to say, you see, there was a document called National Building Code, and it must be one of those, mentioned standards that we will start with. Initially, as usual, our brothers are always, I don't know why, anytime you mention National Building Code, I don't know, it's for all of us, but there is always that one. But we have to insist that we will put the National Building Code as one of the standards. And it was, I think, about number 4, we said it should be there, that they should get for us. So in that standard, what we are trying to do, I know it's going to, it has always been a very difficult work, but what we are trying to do is that I was telling them that even though all the standards exist, there is this code that has already said that in construction project, because we had to now say, okay, this thing that we are doing is construction project management, so that we can properly domicile our argument in that particular committee. And we now said that in that construction project management, the standards that have been empowered to the builders are this, and this. And we are not the one developing it. We have them properly documented in that National Building Code. And we now say, okay, building construction and building construction management, or whatever you call it, what is it that we require to be able to deliver a project appropriately? That is where it is. If the architect produces a drawing, fantastic. That is why he's coming to the site to look at whether the drawing is okay. If the structural engineer develops, have that his own document, fine and good. The QS has also, he has the cost documents too, whatever. Then we are not saying that for you to be able to say you are managing this construction project effectively, that document has already said that the builder is in charge of project and construction management on the field. And what are the documents they require? These are the documents. So these are the documents that are the basic standard documents for project management. And that is where we have picked it up from what he documented in his book, what other people documented, and what these particular NLB and Cobham have also documented. And that is where we are now. And I want to believe that by the time we finish, we will pray that we should be able to say, when a project is to be executed, these are the standards that the builder that is working with you, we require. And this must be at the consultancy level and at the management level. And that is what we are saying. So, but it cannot come into this document because this document is looking at the materials presentation. But we are only saying that, yes, these are the other phases that are also required for standardization of construction development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We just take, let's say, about 3 or 4 questions. And please, if you are asking questions, go straight to the question. If you are making comments, try as much as possible to be brief. If you look at our agenda of today, we've only taken, this is the second paper. We still have about 4 papers to take. So let us be conscious of the time. Okay?
Thank you, sir. That's Chairman, members of the table, other protocols today observed. I'm Professor A. Rahim, Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomosho. I want to commend the presenter for your job well done, as well as the discussion. My take on it is, like it has been said, we have standards. The problem we have is implementation of the standard. And what is the problem of implementation of the standard? Corruption. I think before we leave, we have to talk of how do we manage or totally eradicate this corruption on site. Now, my questions 2. First, for the SON man. You talk of reporting people that have substandard material. What is the procedure involved? Can you give us your number or email, or how do you report? We need that. Then the second one has to do with my brother that talked about blended cement. I'm aware that blended cement, in technical terms, is a cement with pozzolanic material. This has been used in advanced countries for lower standard of work. But talking of blended cement in Nigeria, when Elephant and Dangote will tell us they are producing ordinary Portland cement, please kindly help us define for that. What do you mean by that blended cement in Nigeria? Thank you very much.
Two more, please. With due respect to Prof, before your hand, I saw those two hands. So let me quickly answer to those ones first.
Thank you, sir. My name is I'm Ugweri John, Chairman NIOB Abia State. Mine is not a question, but a suggestion to Oga SON. Please, I still stand to be corrected. I don't think, knowing fully well that SON is a federal government agency, but I don't think there is any builder or building graduate in your employ. Okay, if there is, I think it's high time they live up to their responsibilities, because it's like their impact is not recognized or felt in your agency. Then secondly, we know very well that we have Nigerian standards, so many of them, but it's like these standards, we only hear of them, we have not seen them. So I suggest that maybe in conferences like this, you can make them available to people so that we can lay our hands on them. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Builder Chris Eze from Imo State University and immediate past chairman, and I will be Imo State chapter. With a very great commendation to the presenter of the paper, I want to make some points clear. You see, talking about standards, we have standards, and they are being applied in several ways. But see, you can only apply standards in standard environments. You talked about application and use of standard materials. Before you talk of application of and use of standard materials, you must bring in a standard environment. And what I mean by a standard environment, a professional environment. But if you look at the environment of our building procurement system in this country, you see it's not standardized. Why do I say that? Now let's look at the policy of our building production or procurement. It's contractor-based, it's not builder-based. If it's builder-based, it's professional. If it's contractor-based, it's business. And you know that business, the ultimate aim is to maximize profit. Now, if we are in a system, we are professional builders, that's why I'm challenging us, both Carbon builders and NIOB. We have to do our work. And what is our work? We now look at the system and design our strategy. We need to have our own standard building procurement method, which we must use to challenge the one that is in vogue. And by coming up with that, we build in our interest, our strategies. And that will give us standard conditions of building contract. Look at what we call standard conditions of building contract. You cannot see the role of a builder highlighted there. Who will do it for you? It is when you look at what is obtaining. If the method of standard practice which you advocate is not there, you design an alternative and market it and use it to attack the one that is in existence. And then all other professional bodies, they see reason with you why something is lacking there. Why is it that when the building design is done, it is done by professionals, but during the procurement, they use a contractor? Something is missing there. You saw when the Nigerian president of Society of Engineers was speaking yesterday. He saw, because he knows the value of builders, he now insisted that the contractor he was using will bring a builder. But that may not even solve the problem. Why? Because if I'm a contractor and you employ me as a builder, the concept of your practice as a contractor is profit making. So if I come there and preach standards for you that will cost you more money, that will take you more time, you will sack me. because I'm not in charge of the contract. But if there is a condition of contract that protects me to start at the place I protect the interest of the contractor, the interest of the client, and the interest of society, I will now stand solid there and maintain and ensure that standard practice. So we builders, we now need to strategize and look at all these conditions of contract that are against us. When you see adverts for building procurement, do you see builders mentioned there? It's contractors. And that is what we edge at. At the conception stage, when they come for design, do you see builders there? So where are we brought in? So we need to now sit down and do a strategic thinking and produce a document that will integrate the builder's quality management plan, the health and safety plan. All these are timelines which are important control documents. They don't know how to construct the wall. We construct it for them and put the relevant clauses there and market it. And by the time we do these things, now we begin to apply the standards, and wherever there are mistakes, we begin to improve on them. Without this, we'll still be singing the same story, and corruption will continue to take preeminence over standard practices. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me. What is missing in all of this is the synergy between policy, regulation, market monitoring, and control. Eze was talking about standard conditions. We don't have that. That is supposed to be the tripod on which good quality products are based. Let me remind Mr. SON. A few years ago, I'm glad that Dr. Bamishile is here because he was a point man at that time. Cobon arranged a synergy between builders and SON. The idea was to combine efforts. SON staff scuttled the project after the first workshop. I'm not rubbing your nose into it, but that happened to be part of the history. But nothing is lost. You see, in another country, in other countries, they have something they call the doctrine of pre-knowledge responsibility. We talk a lot, but we don't practice enough. In those countries, you as a builder, when you see a drawing or specification or a combination in which a quality standard has been profaned, in other words, things that are being proposed are below quality, you tell the client, even when you are the contractor, or you are the builder, professional builder in the contractor's office. Because if you don't, and the product fails eventually, you will share the responsibility, or the accountability, let me say. We don't have that system here. We have a national building code, and we also have building materials codes from the Standards Organization of Nigeria. That deals only with quality of materials. The National Building Code deals with both design standards, material standards, and materials handling and procedure of workmanship standard. Which one should take supremacy, I asked you. We should be the ones being wooed by SON. Please come and join us because you know a little bit more than just the quality of materials. We studied quality of materials at the university too. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to be brief, but there's a lot more to this thing than meets the eye. I'm glad you have this, your committee going on, but I think your committee needs a broader brief terms of reference than you have got now. Builders, it's your reputations that's going to be online every time a building collapses. Doesn't matter whether you have professional builders there or not. People say, where are the builders? Nobody will say, why has the client not engaged a professional builder? We have a lot to do, in helping to produce standards that would work, and also to let people who are entrepreneurs know that those standards are working in their favor, not in anybody else's favor, because it is their investment that is being upheld. There is a lot more to be said. There is a lot. A procedure for putting materials in the construction market, there is none here. None whatsoever. In other countries, they call it in France, for instance, they call it the agreement system. Before any material can enter the market, it must be submitted for testing at a standard laboratory, one that is already underscored by the standards organization of that country. When it passes, it's tested in the market. It's actually controlled, tested in the market. If it passes that, then it's allowed to go on the materials market. When it gets there, there is periodical testing too. Random, not controlled, random. And those who do it should be those who use it. Builders who use it should be the ones who do the random testing. We went, this man led a team of professionals, not just builders. He was the one that was chosen by us to lead 7 others at the National Assembly to put teeth to enforcing the National Building Code. They gave a document to the parliamentarians. 4 months later, they called us back and they still gave us nothing. Everything that was done by these guys was already jettisoned by the politicians. And when I faced a press conference, one pressman said, "Okay, I have a message for you from the National Assembly." I said, "What is it?" They say, "Your organization should bring 13 million naira, and so should the others, before we can pass this bill." I told him, "Okay, go to the others, let them contribute, but don't expect any from Coburn." You see, this is where we are. So everything we try to do is being slaughtered by corruption. And somebody came out here and said, we need to kill that animal first if we're going to get anywhere. The alternative is to actually move out and get something similar to what NAFDAC had. Unless we get to, where do we start now? But where you work is where you start. You insist on having that standard. It doesn't matter if you lose your job today. Somebody will remember that you are the one who wanted the standard obeyed. And you will get another job.
Thank you very much. Permit me to, even though I'm here as the moderator, I want us to look at this issue from another angle. Okay? Those of us seated here, I want us to be honest ourselves. We've talked and talked and talked and talked. Fine. How many of us, okay, have copies of these available standards? How many of us? No. We have standard organizations as inform us that they have more than 3,000 standards. Okay? Out of these 3,000, let's assume that maybe only 100 or even 50 is relevant to the building and construction industry. Let us be honest with ourselves. How many of us here have 10? I want to believe that this is the starting point. You are given a contract document and they refer to, even at the tender stage, they refer to standards. Do you have a copy of that standard? Do you look for a copy of that standard to understand what the standard is all about? My colleagues, I think we need to address it from that point of view. Okay? A journey of 100 miles, start from what? Let us try as much as possible to do what? To get copies of this standard. That's number one. For the younger ones, one of the major challenges facing us in this country today is unemployment. I repeat, one of the problems facing us here is unemployment. About 2 months ago, a young lady walked onto one of our sites, and she said she wants to supply materials. I said, did you go to any school or college or whatever? She told me she studied building. You study building and you are here looking for aggregate to supply. Then I asked her, in the last 3 months, how many builders or people that study building have you ever met? He said, no. And you are in Abuja. How will you get employed? Standard Organization and many other agencies of government do employ builders. Okay? I'm talking to the younger ones. Standard Organization and almost all agencies of government do employ builders. Me that I'm talking to you, I've held the Department of Standardization of SON before. I've held that department. So people may be hearing that for the first time today. Okay? I've been the head of the standards for building and all construction standard in Nigeria. I've held that department in Standard Organization before. So, please, builders, you can apply to SON and you will be employed. Okay? So it's not question of it's only A or only E or only this that is there. Builders are there. And in fashioning out these standards, standard organizations, they are not doing it alone. They are doing it in collaboration with the private sector. In fact, in every committee they set up, it is the private sector that are always the chairman of that committee. So, that will not permit us to continue the discussion on this. So, we will now move on to the other paper, that is paper 3. Thank you very much, and remain blessed.
Yes.
There are many types of cement. Cement 1 is ordinary Portland cement. Very, very costly. That's why we're having it as BS12. But the cement 2 you are seeing today is either 35.5, 45.5. Please, before you use any of the cement, check the one that is appropriate for use. The 35.5, I won't enforce it on you, but use it for mainstream. While for the 45.5 can be used for concrete work. Don't mix them up, because the limestone hardening has reduced the nature of that cement from ordinary Portland cement to limestone Portland cement. Please let us have it in mind, so that it will not be a situation that you are taking cement. Portland cement is different from Portland limestone cement. Portland limestone cement is what we have at 45.5, 35.5. Before you buy, check the bar. It's written there, either highly strength or least strength. It depends on what you want. But your customer or the owner of the project wants you to deliver a quality product, so that he can call you for next project. He's only testing you to know whether you can do the work and deliver appropriately. Secondly, please, before you buy any reinforcement, make sure you turn it to about 180 degrees to find out whether it can give you requirement. If it breaks, if you see crack, leave that one or report immediately to SON. We'll arrest and seize the products. Don't let us waste our money, and don't let us waste our resources. If you see something, say something, please. And our website is www.son.gov.ng. Any information you want, any communication you want, 24 hours 7, 24/7, we are always there to attend to your case. Please. And if you want my own information, phone number 080-3366-7960. Sir? Oh, sorry, because of time, I want to pay the 080-33-66-7960. And I want to say, Prof, that synergy will still continue, I can assure you. I promise you. Why am I saying so? The present regime is ready to listen to everybody. If you visit him and give him, if you want to have an appointment with him, he's ready to receive you. And fortunately, NIOB have written, we are working behind the scene for him to receive you very soon, within this month. And also the other one that we are talking about, National Building Construction Standard. This month is going to continue because we have about 3 sections: the material, the construction, and the practice. Every section is taking care of this. So please, bear with us. We are very sorry we can't attend to everybody, but anytime you come to any of our state offices, we are ready to receive you. All the local, state chairmen and various body professionals, we synergize with everybody. Thank you very much.
No, I think if we give opportunities for everybody to vet the quality of knowledge we have here, I know very well we cannot leave this place. So that is why we have to clip some of these knowledges and say, okay, you can communicate us through our different websites. Thank you, Prof, so that you will not talk again. Okay, yes, actually the Standard Organization of Nigeria director that came here actually gave us a list of standards that I have here, about 53 standards are on the list, and I'm handing it over to the Secretariat for proper documentation. Okay, we quickly, I think we have to adjust our program a little by continuing immediately so that we can finish. Oh, what are you saying? Issues and management challenges in the Nigerian building construction industry. I think as we were discussing the other ones, we may have touched some of the issues here. This is to be presented by Builder Professor Martin Dada. Builder Professor Martin Dada, please kindly come to the high table. We said before, the small man with mighty brain, isn't it? It's in our club. Oh. That's the problem. The smaller you are, the bigger the brain. So, okay, that's on a lighter note. Thank you very much. You're welcome, sir. Then we have the moderator of the session, Builder Dr. Micah Obibu. We have the discussants. It's a group of very big men in the society. Starting with the chairman of Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, Professor Kabir Bala. Number 2, Honorable Ahmed B. Keita, Chairman House Committee on Housing. Is he around? Number 3, Mr. Jonathan Melajuma, DG NIBS Kuru. Professor Builder Akindoyeni. And Professor Adekunle Wahab. Builder Professor Adekunle Wahab. Is it? That's what I'm seeing here. Yeah. Is that the one? Okay. Because I think we are dealing with policy issues. When you are dealing with policy issues, you use policy people to politicize and policy. Put everything in policy so that the policy and polity will become very politicized. So, I humbly want to, okay, sorry, all this while we have not introduced our rapporteurs. I realize that mistake has been made before. And I quickly want to do that as Prof comes to the high table. We have the members of the rapporteurs, the ones that are going to give us, are doing the brain work. We have Builder Dr. Napoleon D. Usman, one of the coordinators of the program. Then we have Builder Dr. James O. Apochi, is he there? Okay. And we have Builder Joseph Anejo, is he there? And we have Builder Dr. Ibrahim O. Hassan. Okay, you are all welcome. Thank you very much. So may I hand over to the presenter? Please quickly do this one sharply and to precision.
I'm talking shortly on policy issues and management challenges in Nigerian building construction industry. Yes, there are two approaches one can take in presenting a paper like this. We could present from the theory aspect, and there's nothing bad in theory. As a matter of fact, somebody said there's nothing as practical as theory. Then we could present just real-life problems from which we take agenda for action, please. Now, we're going to use this outline. The construction industry, the building industry, and national development, history, development, and nature of Nigerian building industry, policy issues in the Nigerian building industry, some management challenges and conclusions and recommendations. What's a policy? We understand that policy is a statement of intents, intentions, or you are establishing a protocol or procedure for doing something. Now, we want to also explain, sorry, this thing is, what is this history? How do we talk about the history and development of the nature of the Nigerian building industry? Nigeria got independence, we got what we call self-government in 1960, we got independence. And if you check the history of developing countries, what they do is that immediately they got independent, a wave of nationalism took over. They wanted to nationalize, and that would have informed. In 1978, we got the Nigerian indigenization decree. Even though in our present regime, we are now reversing the decree. We are now saying we are looking for foreign investment. That's not the subject of this discussion, though. Then, after the Civil War, we have what we call the 3 R's, which is reconstruction, reconciliation, and rehabilitation. And there was a time we had so much money that we didn't know how to spend it. And so, but now, I think everybody here knows how to spend money. While we are here in this conference and other engagement, sometimes how to make the money. Then, there was burgeoning population growth. And I'm afraid, not in a negative way, Nigeria is projected to go to have a population of about 400 million, I think in the next 20 or, about 50 years' time. And in that regard, our houses, our infrastructure, if we are not replacing them and adding more, our infrastructure will be overburdened. Then what happened was that there was ease, a crave for foreign, a taste. Our taste changed from our traditional architecture. In my village or in your village, in those days where we had mud houses and thatched roof, we felt, even where we're using mud bricks, it was a sign of poverty then. Whether it was a psychological defeat for people, I don't know, but it was a sign of poverty to build with mud houses. But now, I think Libre and some other people are now telling us it's not a sign of poverty. Then there was also rural-urban drills and many other things. Then, but one thing we knew is that during the General Yakubu Gowon regime, there was what we call the Nigerian National Development Plans. I know our younger ones may not have seen such plan, but please go and read. You see that Nigeria had ambitious development plan. And General Gowon even said it that if we had continued with that plan, with those plans, Nigeria would perhaps be in the same bracket with the Asian tigers. But at that time, it didn't matter whether you changed the permanent secretary, it didn't matter whether you changed the Director General of an organization, there was a template. When General Babangida took over, they changed to what we call rolling plans. Well, I don't know the plan we have here. What I mean is whether it's rolling or permanent or cascading is another. We are talking as Nigerians. Now, that's the nature of our industry. I mean, the evolution. Then I'm talking to us that you remember how we are talking about the history, the development and nature of our industry. We also remember that we're part of the Commonwealth. We are from the Commonwealth. I mean, we were and we are still part of the Commonwealth. Now, this is where I talk about half education. We have some people, sometimes some of our people that go to study in US, in Russia, in different parts of the world, they sometimes confuse our students and practitioners here. They forget our geopolitical evolution. That we are in the Commonwealth, and in the Commonwealth we have 7, for example, in our industry we have 7 professions in the Commonwealth. I used to tell people in US you don't have building, you don't have quantity surveying, or you have the equivalent of that. You have cost engineering in US, you have building as a section construction institute in US. And so if some people go to US, they will say, hey, well, what's this? There's no building. Or they go to Moscow or Leningrad, they will tell us there's no building, there's no quantity surveying. But we are not ashamed, and we should not forget where we are coming from. That is, now, the construction industry, the building industry, and national economic development. I'm going to skip that, but a major thinker in construction industry is Professor George Ofori, and he has been able to link the growth of the industry to national economic development. And the reality is, somebody said the construction industry sneezes, the economy is going to catch the cold. And there is also the issue of difference between development and growth. I just give it in a simplistic term now, give a small explanation. For example, you have a lot of money, you have $1 million in your account, you keep saving money and you refuse to send your children to school. Your bank account is growing, but your family is not developing. So for us, as professionals, as Nigerians, what we are interested in is what? Is development and not just growth. It's not the growth of the industry, just the industry alone. Now, what are the policy issues? This is where we are now talking about. There are many. I'm just going to highlight some of them and dwell on some of the critical ones. The countries that grow take deliberate efforts at policy. China, I was reading somewhere that the industrial growth of China is not because of oil and whatever oil, it's not oil, it's not oil and gas, it's as a result of construction export. They are exporting construction expertise. Bangladesh, perhaps the poorest country in the world, is exporting construction artisans to Saudi Arabia. So many things are interconnected with construction. Now, the deliberate policy and national economy, you have to take deliberate steps. Now, what are the general policy issues? They are what we call macroeconomic issues that our grammar here cannot change. The interest rates, the exchange rates, whether you want to buy the lending rates, what our monetary policy, the Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee, when they meet, they will tell you that this is the rate where the lending rate is at this, the social rate. Now, we cannot change that except through advocacy. Taxation levels, exchange rate. What are other specific policies? Number one, we have got national housing policy. And I'm so happy we have experts here. At the risk of preempting the SSA, I know he has been involved at so many levels with the national housing policy, even in some other sub-national entities. We have had national housing policy, very beautiful on paper. And we have had revisions. We had 2011 or thereabout. And the policy will address issues of inputs. How do you have materials, machineries, finance, alternative, and labor and management. Then we even have national, how many of us are aware that we had national construction policy? That's far back as around 93. And that policy addresses issue, I think that we are now talking like local content, we're talking of security. Many of our, I don't know, many of our buildings in public sector, have we taken care of security implications of giving all this construction, or majority of them, to foreigners? The documentation is with them and everything. The National Construction Policy addresses that. We also have the National Building Code. We also have, not only that, the Executive Orders 2 and 5. Then, apart from those ones, we have laws. I'm afraid we have laws that are also out, they come out from policy. For example, our Professor Kunle Adewa, our emeritus professor, is here. When he was a special advisor to the then President Olusegun Obasanjo on due process, we have the Budget Implementation and Monitoring Unit, and in those days we used to call it due process. That was a policy. The policy dovetailed to the law we have now, BPP Act, Bureau of Public Procurement Act. Well, I'm going to, it's not responding, can you please help me? Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to, what happens, how far have we progressed on these policies? The national housing policy, where are we? It's like the goalpost keeps changing. Sometimes 12 million deficit, 15, recently now 17, and it's like next year it's likely going to be more than 17 because the rate of our population growth is more than the rate of development. Then what is the progress? The one good thing we got from one of the policies is that it's one area of private sector investment. Redan is an outshoot of one of the national housing policy, where we have the policy recommended the encouragement of the private sector to take ownership. You know, before what we had before is what we call the sole provider approach, in which case people saw the government as the provider of mass housing. If you wanted to provide mass housing, Shagari scheme, and may I talk on the lighter mood? Somebody said somewhere, a senior advocate of Nigeria said, when imbeciles are ruling the knowledgeable, then there will be problem. You know what happened? He said during the military regime, there was an estate somewhere in one part of the country, and an entrepreneur wanted to develop a private estate. And the then military governor stopped him. You know why? Just the argument that how can an individual have estate and do roads and have electricity? You know, that time, because there was that understanding of the sole provider approach, because it was strange to them. And the case went to court, up to Supreme Court. Eventually, I think the man died before that dream. Maybe I should tell you Agbara Estates. You have been hearing of Agbara Estate. The one man called Lawson. The case went to court. It was because the then government, or the then people in power, they saw the government as the sole provider of mass housing. But I think the paradigm is shifting. Am I right now? Yes, people are not even going to rely on government for providing housing as if you feel you are in the vulnerable group of social housing. Somebody may wait ad infinitum. Now, another thing about is the issue of construction policy. Well, some ideas came, we talk on the local content. Then the National Building Code. For example, the National Building Code is well crafted, good in paper, but we have to also assess how far are we with the implementation. Now, what are the management? We also have laws, we have FHA. These are intervention efforts to address building issues, housing problems in our society. We have the Federal Housing Authority, we have the Federal Mortgage Bank, we have the, what we call Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, just recently around 2014, and many of them. Now, what are the management challenges? Number one, there is what we call policy somersault. What did I call it? I'm sorry, you are not my student, but I just want to be sure you are following me. There is what we call policy somersault, policy inconsistency. If my friend is not in my party and she involved a good policy and I'm taking over, I've got to show that I'm not the chief executive of the state. I've got to suspend that policy and bring my own. That was not the plan, that was not the principle of the National Development Plan then. Then there's what we call ignorance and half education, outright incompetence, arrogance, and sabotage. I'm just talking generally. Then there's myopic political considerations, not based on science, on logic. Somebody just said that in Abia State, they passing a law, or whether they have passed an act that you cannot handle more than 3-story building. It is defective in logic, it is defective in law, it is defective in science. It's not scientific, it's not logical, and I don't see the law backing it. So the problem is people make law for now, they are not thinking of the next 30 years. They are not thinking of the next 50 years. So that is a challenge sometimes with our policies and laws. Then we have the problem of continuity. Then we have problem of executive capacity in housing and infrastructure procurement. I don't know. I was of the school of thought some years ago. Some presidents in this country, some governors, they want to save a lot of money and hand over to the incoming generation. Some of us are of the school of thought that why didn't the government spend them on infrastructure that time? Now the problem is this. I leave $60 billion for you in another regime. I refuse to build houses, build the roads. Another regime comes and squanders it. Then, who has lost? So, the state has lost. I think these are issues we need to... Then, even though that government may say, do we have executive capacity? Now, there is what we call ICRC, Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission, that is talking of PPP. But the issue is, do we have the capacity at the public sector level, at all our MDAs, in the federal and state level, for PPP arrangements? I didn't say Nigerians, I'm not saying Nigerians are not brilliant, but have we had the capacity because it's so multidimensional? There are bankability issues, there are professional issues, there are legal issues, there are procurement issues. Then, another management challenge is that, for example, let's look at the National Building Code. I'm now going to talk of the specific challenges. Example, the National Housing Policy, we know the challenges, the National Construction Policy, the National Building Code. Now, the specific challenges. How do you meet housing needs? We keep talking the amount we address that. Wages, minimum wage is 18,000. And you said somebody should build a Gary house of 5 million and there's no mortgage arrangements. That's a challenge. Skills. Thank God, I think Corbon, NISO, the federal government, they are trying to address the issue of skill, but that has been a challenge. Then land. Land remains a major issue in our country. Access to land, affordability, and availability. Oftentimes, land is available, but it's not affordable, and there are access problems due to legal issues. And so there are different schools of thought saying, amend the Land Use Act, don't amend the Land Use Act. Now, the National Building Code, we're going to talk about that. My dear people, Nigerians, we have good policies, good conferences, good workshops, good talk shops, but if there's any shop we don't have, is action shop. Our building code, 2006, I met somebody, I don't want to mention his name, he was a director of house, something in UK, and he was telling me it's it's so good. You know, UK does not have a written constitution as it were, but the society is orderly. Our code is very good, but the issue is the things there being implemented. Number one, Professor Akindele has just spoken that the law for the enforcement of the provisions, they have not been passed. Why? Despite all the collapses we have. Number two, I'm going to challenge us now. We are waiting for law. I don't agree. I didn't say the law should not be passed. Do you need law to brush your teeth in the morning? Do you need law to bath in the morning? The code is just acceptable norm. There's something in manufacturing we call GMP, good manufacturing practice. You just have GMP that these are the procedure. HACCP is also in processing industry. Now, the challenge is how many professionals even if the law has not been passed, are you saying when it is time for architectural design, go and see architect. When it's time for structural, go and see structural. When it's time for builder, go and see this. When it's time for this, go and see that. But you know what we have now? I was telling the women people, that is it because of intellectual poverty or economic poverty that is causing it that a Nigerian professional in our industry will say, I know everything. When we went to school, they taught us land surveying. So they taught us building. They taught us architecture. And so because you are taught that, are you an expert? I also asked some people in the forum and a television program. I said, a pharmacist must know everything in the human body because his drug is going to work in the human body. A medical doctor must know drug reaction before he prescribes it. But that means they know much of each other. Am I right? But I asked the anchor of the program that will you submit yourself to a pharmacist to do surgery on you? But the problem here, I think we need to translate it to the industry. Like this NSC president said yesterday, it's not that you don't have idea of what some other people do, but you don't have the license, you don't have the training. And the scientific way to know somebody's profession is what is the training and what is the law saying. I think that's, then we have issue of, now, for example, there is a race issue about our contracting process. And I have issues with the DPP, and I'm talking as a Nigerian. And we don't have to shy away from issues. The National Building Code, the spirit of the law, there's something in law, I'm not a lawyer, there's something in law they call the spirit of the law. The intendment and the intent of the building code is that you professionalize every area from design to what? Construction. That the person who wants to hold responsibility is a professional. The contractor is a business entity. Is Ababarisi or whatever, Agbekoya and Co. But we want to hold somebody responsible. But the reality is, in the PPP big documents, if you check it, there are documents for quantity surveyors, for architectural, but like Builder Eze said, you discover that there are when this comes to construction, they will say contractor. Contractor is a nebulous word. It's a word for a businessman. It's a word for an entrepreneur. A contractor is not necessarily a professional. Yes. So in that case, we have to address that. For example, if you see some of the BPP documents, it will talk of construction methodology, and they will say the contractor should produce the construction. That's correct, but it should be refined to the contractor should cause to be produced a construction methodology. That means it's going to use the services of a registered builder who is trained in production, who is trained in construction to produce that. If it's a construction program, the project health and safety plan, it should do that. Then I'm trying to round up. Okay, I can't. Well, now, we have specific challenges with no issues. I'm just dwelling on the code. I'm dwelling on other issues. I want to go to conclusions and recommendations. Number one, we should be public-spirited, long-range thinkers and we should have long-range goals. If we are thinking for the present alone, then our country is going to be in the backwaters. Some countries now, for different sectors of their economy, they are having what we call 50-year plan. As far back as about 10 years ago, UK, some countries are thinking of their industry in the next 50 years. They are thinking of this sector, how many students are going to come in, how many lecturers we have in this industry, do we have enough artisans, do we have enough professionals? We have to be long-range thinkers and think also for the future. Then there should be multi-professional advocacy. Are we going to keep lamenting about our political space? That is where I take a different view. Yes, we know that the laws need to be passed. But in the absence of laws, there could be advocacy. I think that's where many of the professionals have failed. I met somebody who's involved in the NSAS. How many of us are aware of the NSAS? NSAS. I know, I met him. When he was talking to me, he said, I pay my tax, I'm not taking contract from them. He just spoke something. Do you know now that he was with me when somebody was calling him on phone that a magistrate had been arrested? And he just started from advocacy. And when he was talking, he was telling me some personal issue, the funding he is committing to it. And he said when they saw that it's not that I was interested in a government, it's not that I was interested in a government business or anything, why can't we do advocacy? The Reagan president here yesterday said, he was talking about Abuja housing show. For goodness sake, I respect the young man. You know he's a lawyer. Why is it? But his advocacy is such now that, even though he's not a politician, but I know that people will want to talk to him. People want to hear his views. Why can't we form advocacy groups? Why can't we write in the media? Why can't we give suggestions? Why can't we ask questions? What stops us asking our politicians, what are you doing about this? I think that's an area we need to be on the toes of the politicians. We need to set an agenda for them. Then there's also the issue of team building with technical expertise. I've discovered here, sir, many countries of the world are not as endowed as Nigeria when it comes to technical expertise in any area. But the challenge is being able to see how our different parts make the whole. How we work together, how we know how our inputs, the subset, the set theory, the subset form a set, how our inputs make the whole. And that is what we have to do in our professional training and education services, to teach our students how to work together in team. Then we need to address curriculum development. Then we need to have metrics for monitoring performance of policies. And my issue with what Budaze said is that builder's document should be used for both tender and construction. I'm saying tender and construction. That means people don't need the tender. The admissibility of a tender should be that the documents are prepared by a registered builder. Then, lastly, there should be citizen empowerment, access to lands and funds. We need to empower our citizens. Let me tell you lastly, when people are too poor, do you know they get to a point they cannot even protest? When you ask people to say we're going to have a protest for 4 days, we are not going to go inside until the government listens to us, by the time they do it for 1 day, they say, well, the thing I will eat tomorrow, if I continue this protest, they are not going to give me. So you can impoverish. People are impoverished sometimes that they cannot eat. Do you know in a way they can be impoverished intellectually, impoverished politically, and they are the whims and caprices of whatever policies they do. We need to call our governments at different levels, put them on their toes, put our politicians on their toes. If we don't do that, when they pass a law, whoever you are, the law is binding on you. Ladies and gentlemen, if I've taken your time, I'm sorry. Any good thing out of it, we thank everybody. But any faults, I take responsibility. Thank you, sir.
Professors of the institute. So you will bear with them, because when they start rearing their ideas, but I will plead that we should be short so that we can have another paper. Thank you. I hand microphone to the discussant, and I will start with Professor Bala.
Thank you very much. It's unfortunately for me, I have two very senior professors that I revere.
Sorry for that, for an oversight. I have a list that I did not. You see, when I think they say light travels faster than sound. My eyes saw something and my voice did not pick it fast. So I forgot to call on the eminent professor of construction management and vice chancellor, Plateau State University, who is by name Professor Y.D. Izam, is one of the discussants. You are welcome, sir. Thank you.
Well, I started by saying, you know, in the, please, you'll allow me a bit. I'm happy the moderator is also an academician. You know, in academics, it's very regimented, just like the military. And that's why I said it's unfortunate that I'm given the microphone, because I'm the youngest, I'm their grandson. Professor Wahab and Professor, well, among the discussants. So whenever they are there, I say I will step down my professorship because I can't answer when they are sitting. And therefore now I'm a student, and I hope after they will assess me. I'm not a professor for this period. First, I would like to again mention, please, it's not part of this paper, I'd like to specifically again recognize Mr. Afolabi Mokwede, the Special Assistant to the President on Job Creation, because he's a friend of the building profession. Whatever issues have been coming about training of craftsmen, whatever I will say, it is, I will mention because of his singular interest in NIOB and common that we got this assignment by the federal government. So we thank you, sir, so much. Now about this paper, policy issues in the Nigerian construction industry, I think the paper has captured the major issues. And if we look at the policy development in the country, right from independence, it has captured the issue of indigenization, which was one of the major policies, because most businesses were owned by the colonialists. So now during the indigenization decree, we said Nigerians should own certain percentage of businesses. Now, but that is where the problem started, because they became Nigerian in name. And to date, they are foreign companies, even though you call them Nigerian because they are registered. And then Nigerians, are supposed to have the major shareholdings, yes. Then came the development plans, where they have all the expected infrastructural developments for those periods, 5-year periods. And let me go down memory lane a bit. That's how we started some of these professions, architecture, building, and quantity surveying. We learned that because they started in ABU, so when they started architecture, the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Audu, was on there was a problem after the independence. When architecture started, they could only be registered by RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects. And so, but then RIBA would dictate how many architects would be registered every year in all the colonies, in all the Commonwealth countries. So, and then the maximum would not be more than 5 in a year, registered architects all over the world, 5, 6, they determine. So Nigerian Institute of Architects decided to breakaway in 1960, and the Europeans got angry and they packed out of the country. And so now I want to relate it to the Vice Chancellor. So now there was a problem, no lecturers in architecture. So the Vice Chancellor had to go to the East, mostly Poland and Russia, and then a little from Egypt to get lecturers to come and teach the course. So along the line, somebody told him, why are you doing architecture without building? He said, what is building? So the person explained the building to him. He said he established the Department of Building in Abiu's area. And so to take care, that's what we learned, to take care of the infrastructural development that the paper mentioned, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation and reconstruction. Reconciliation is the soft part of it, yes. So that is how it started, and then it expanded. But then I'm linking it to the indigenization. Here you are producing professionals who do not own the businesses. So these ones came down to, they stopped the development plans, and we moved into the rolling plans. And like the paper said, sometimes now we don't know how to describe some of these things. Now on the issue of policy, I want us to look at the policy from two perspectives, what I'll call the macro level and the micro level. At the macro level is what the paper discussed extensively, and that is government policy issues and management issues. But then we have policy management issues, especially at the micro level, that's at the project level, at the site level. Now, we take the macro level, for instance, the housing policy, which the paper discussed. This issue of, let's take the issue of deficit. Some time ago, the Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute commissioned a research to establish the actual deficit in housing in this country. And it became very difficult because there are exact methodologies for determining housing policy. But then the indices were not available anywhere. Because I remember one of the authors there tried to adopt one of the formulae, but then he modified it with one factor, and the factor was the number of housing approvals for that particular year. And what he got from Nigerian National Bureau of Statistics was, I think, over 100, just about 100 approvals for the whole country. So you know that was wrong right from the beginning, so he couldn't establish it. Now we went back down where it started in this country. And the only document you'll find is when this former governor of Lagos State, Lateef Jakonde, was minister. He attended one meeting, and I think in the speech they wrote the deficit was 5 million. That was the beginning. And everybody thereafter just projected based on our population. So this 17 figure is a lie as far as, you know, yes, statistics are concerned. Go back, that was the beginning. 5 was an abstract figure, 5 million. But then thereafter, everybody, like the paper said, 12 million, so now 17 million. There was a time it was 8 million, 12 million, 17 million. So, yes, you have said it. Yes, if you give us a microphone, it's difficult to stop. So now, also, the issue of the housing policy itself, I don't think we have tried to address the real issue. Try to an example. There is a 2-bedroom house. A professor has always said it. If we are going to go by the provisions of the housing policy now, no professor can buy a 3-bedroom house. No professor in Nigeria can buy a 4-bedroom house. So how are you going to solve this problem? Now the mortgage also is not developed in this country. If you are going for mortgage, you pay mortgage for 26 years as a professor. How many years have you got to live in service, even in the world anyway. And so, and the interest, you know, is supposed to be a single-digit interest. So the mortgage is not available, and go to any commercial bank is 30%. Hardly can you get anything less than 30%. So why must we provide the houses? Why don't we adopt other methodologies? Provide the land, service land, so that people can build what they want. And that's the other issue also. We know we are a multicultural society where people have more than one wife, 2, 3, even 4 or more wives. Some chiefs have 11 wives with land. So now you build a 2-bedroom house and he's retiring into that house. And there's no, if you check the ones that they are doing currently, there's not even space, courtyard, for you to do anything. And we know, like I said, housing is also reflects your culture. And in this country, we are very rich in culture. Take a wedding ceremony, for instance, how much space it takes. So you build 2-bedroom houses or 3-bedroom houses, which is not adequate. The mortgage is not there. Construction policy is not working. Building code is there. I think it has been covered in the paper, but implementation is a problem. I think it's a little bit more than law in practice. There are many, many other issues, as the presenter knows, because there are 7 professions. And the Court Enforcement Division, if it is to be constituted, is made up of other professionals. So it's difficult, and the way it is supposed to be implemented is that there should be some kind of concurrence. So it's not as easy as if you want to implement any section of the code, you know, in solo. The local content, we have the executive orders 2 and 5, procurement, and then local comment. It's like all other policies that we have in this country. Who would implement? Now we indigenize this country. Let me cite an example. We said people should come and do this thing, but we don't have equal space to compete for anything. I know a project where Julius Berger at that time submitted a bid, and the cost of one block was about 500 naira. Nigerian contractors submitted 65 naira for the same contract, and yet Julius Berger won that contract. So how are we going to indigenize? And we have this policy. I know this contract is not, I participated in the process. So we have executive order 2, executive order 5. Who is going to implement? How is it going to be implemented? These are issues that we have to look at. We may have the policy, even when where we have the policy, implementation becomes a problem. Which takes me to the procurement law policy issue also, Procurement Act. Now, we have the Procurement Act, but all of us know, I want to quote Brother Ayuba Mishile, we know, all of us, what happens in the procurement system. I know a contract, for instance, where 11 bids were submitted. All the 11 bids belong to one person. So Head Hotels, he won. So how are we going to do this? Now, and then 3, the third aspect, startups. This, we have graduates who graduated from building, they come after 2 years, rigorous process, they are registered with Cobon, they are now ready to start business. Now they go to register and you say, what do you call this in CAP? Corporate, bring your registration. Next, bring tax clearance, even if you have not paid. Bring ITF registration. Bring PENCOM registration. Bring previous experience. How do you VAT? Where in hell can a startup do this? I've mentioned this in many fora so that people from government can hear. You say you are opening up this ease of doing business. You are bringing people from abroad, another policy, some assault, to ease business for them. But we have graduates who cannot start any business. We have all the impediments for them to start. Tell me, how can a graduate looking for a job bring all these documents? All of us here who have companies know how difficult it is to get these documents every year. Just to update your documents, 1.5 million. So these are issues that we have to look at in the construction industry. And performance bond, which we have to pay money, yes. So I'm happy Mr. Folabi is here, who is a patron of the youth in this country. So we hope it will be taken to higher levels, especially startups. It's a very, serious policy problem. You can't start anything, and the children are ready to start. Are you not ready?
We are ready.
Thank you very much.
Zam.
Thank you very much. I was also reluctant to come up here for similar reasons with Professor Kabir, but it's a real privilege to be here to appreciate my brother, Professor Martin, for this wonderful presentation. I got one or two issues that I would just want to emphasize because a number of the issues have been taken up by the first the first contributor. That the problem really with Nigeria is not a deficit of policies. As we tried through the paper to see the build-up of several of them, but maybe the implementation, the achievement in the implementation of these policies. I was very excited to, and this point is very important, the issue whether we have a building industry in Nigeria. He made mention of some things that are heartwarming, that yes, in terms of training and practice, yes, the professions are established. We have clear-cut demarcations in terms of the contributions of the professions to the development of what we can call a building industry. But the second issue is the problematic of whether there are policies that are working so that the prosperity of the industry in terms of delivering value, in terms of impact on the national economy, in terms of creating the space for the professionals to fulfill themselves as professionals and also add value to nation building. And back again to the issue of policies, I think I will just speak to two very important ones in a related manner. There is one in the main paper, perhaps he didn't have time to talk about it in the PowerPoint. He mentioned the document, the 2013 Roadmap to Housing, which was a fantastic blueprint. I hope that in the course of continuity in governance, we have not put this document in the trash bin. But in terms of, the anticipation of, the building needs, in terms of even issues about skills, in terms about the roles that professionals can play, I think that document has been able to put together a number of things. The second one is the National Building Code. Again, it also talks about the contemplation of the entire process from design to construction in terms of professionalism and the roles of various individuals. So again, I think this speaks to an ancient issue about the role that professionals can play. Plato, a Greek philosopher as far back as the 16th or 17th century, if I remember, made mention about the fact that it is the professionals that make any given economy what it is. And I have also thought in recent that if Nigeria needs any serious reforms, I think it is the reform of the professional sector. We have a country that seems not to be working because of the nature of our response to the roles that professionals can play. There have been some kind of very funny activities in that sector. And I think that if some emphasis on that can be placed, it will be worthwhile. And back to the National Assembly, Professor Akindo said something to us today that we need to encourage our members Because a critical missing link, again, however the degree of advocacy, if people are not in the theater of action to enforce some of these things. So if people like Builder Kolade will succeed in getting to the Senate, it can be a rallying point for many of these things that we're looking for. Because if they're not there, they are not there. In the university where I'm chief servant, we are reworking the tendering documents to request for builders' documents. So things like program and construction methodology, we are now beginning to ask for them. You can't be a contractor in my university without submitting this along with the tender documents. I don't think that a few of us that are opportune to be change agents, we don't need so many of these regulations. We have to be change agents in our little areas of action. A lot of our chapter chairmen that are permanent secretaries in ministries in states can begin to start something. We have a DG procurement in Plateau State, and we are also talking to see how we can influence the law that is now in the House of Assembly to also give builders a space to be able to realize their ambitions in terms of practice. So while we lament, yes, there are real issues that over the years National Assembly has really, in my own view, not helped in re-engineering the Nigerian society in the right direction in terms of professionalism and giving everybody a role to play. But again, in terms of practice, we can do our little best to make sure that we push the development agenda in our little spaces. And I believe that somewhere, somehow, we'll get to the promised land. Thank you.
Professor Wahab, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I also want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Falabi here. I've only in print that I may come across him, but I'm glad today that he's here at these premises. The first thing I would say to all of us that are here is that Professor Dada's paper is not one of those papers we should just put in our shelves and not read them. As a matter of fact, what makes a conference like this important, and I'm going to appeal to the NIOB, the gurus that are there, that maybe we should limit the number of papers that are presented at the conference. And perhaps should also ensure that maybe the presenter just talk some summaries of them and let us divide into groups and go out, technically tear the papers into pieces, not the pieces that you know of. I mean, not destructive, policies. But also, I'm using also this medium. I have not forgotten my responsibility here, but to say that even our postgraduate students or final year students, these are some of the things that they should confront themselves with the next time they get to with their teachers, to discuss some of these issues and tell us both the practice and the theory behind some of these publications. And so that the people can possess those publications. I tell you what I do in my own postgraduate programs. By the way, I'm still teaching as a professor emeritus. It's a thankless job. I don't know how this country forgot to say that those of us on Pilton's, pensions will get out of Abuja, take a flight to Lagos, take a car and a driver to Ife, and the only thing you get is they give you an accommodation. How you get there, whether with water in your tank or whatever. No, I would say it's because Abolabi is here. No, the point I'm trying to say is that what we do in my time, even right now, is to confront students with this kind of presentations and simply discuss them in so detail. In my own graduate school, I don't even teach the students anything for the first 3-4 weeks. What we do is to know who we are, what experience do you have since you graduated? What have you been doing? And we circulate those presentations after, you know, word processing them to all the members of the graduate class. So that when you are leaving not as one member of a 12 or 20 students or postgraduate student, but you are leaving as 20 people. In fact, if that's all you take away from the MSc program, is good enough for you. That is if you get back home and read what your colleagues have read, and you've read your own and chip in your own ideas. Having said that as preliminary, which may be the only thing you take away from here, because these erudite, connoisseurs, guru professors, they have more than lived over some of us. This is the way it should be. I am lucky that from IFE point of view, we have produced over 70 professors who I think our colleague, although they don't like me using them as colleagues, when they get to part 5 of any of the courses in IFE, whether building, civil, architecture or planning, they are our colleagues, because all that we recognize to produce an expert, a professional, is the BSc. One of my sisters told me that maybe only you have read more than anybody that will make money in your life. So I don't want to, dwell on that, but she did not understand what it means to be at the level in which we are. Professor Dada has mentioned quite some few things. We all started from rural housing, because the houses we live in those days are the one we build by ourselves. And then our parents finish it as they go along, because they don't have enough money to complete it in one go. And that's how some of us actually picked the idea that we were going to study building later. And it's still there, because what is your income? What is the income that you earn? In most civilized countries, it's 2 times, 3 times your income should produce you an accommodation. But if you multiply the salaries of professors right now by 40, you probably will not be able to get a decent, decent accommodation. I am not complaining, because Jack Onde has proved that right when he told us that this building that I'm putting up must not be more than 9,000 naira. All you need to do, make sure the infrastructure is right, structurally, 3-4 story building, and put a door at the entrance of each of the flats, and put a door, in front of the bathroom, so that the kids don't come and be peeping to see what's going on there. And leave the rest. If anybody got those houses, solid, it was solidly built, and refused to do anything, let him remain there for the rest of their life. That is the one way in which you can reduce the cost of construction. I am not emphasizing that you just put up any ramshackle and call it a housing. Let it be structurally sound, whether it's rain or thunder or whatever. We are lucky in this country, we don't have any earthquake. And let the owners of those properties get inside it and finish it up to their own taste, whether they like it or not. Professor Dada also mentioned a series of policies that have been worked upon in this country. The 5-year development plan, the housing policy, which I humbly took part. I was one of the panel of 10 people. But one that pained me most is the construction policy. Both the housing and construction did not see the law in them. They were reports. That's why nobody took them seriously. I have been talking to both the building, the NSC, NIQS, that this policy we should go over them again and see whether the time has come for us to put legitimacy in, put them into law so that it can be implemented. I am going to hurry up because of the time factor that our problem has been enunciated by the last 2-3 speakers. Implementation of any policies that have been enacted. It is implementation that matters. When we were working at the due process office to put the procurement law into place, we thought it was a good idea, and I thought, at least during the period I spent up to 2007, when President Obasanjo left office, I think the document was intact. It can be made intact. And if you find any fault on there, it is because Nigeria will not speak. Whoever is there And whoever they are criticizing in their place of work, either the DG or so, he knows which instrument to pull to ensure that any report that they write against them, even the authority that should take decision will not see it. You can only enforce, you can only punish people that have been properly reported. That is one of the things that Nigerians will not query, will not write a report about anybody. It's like some of us in academics. I don't do it. If a student is number 28 in a class of 28 and he has a reference from me, I will say, yeah, he had a degree in building, but at the time he was graduating, he was 27 in a class of 28. If you want to offer him a job on the basis of that mediocrity, you can go ahead and do so. But I'm not going to say that excellent, you know, it was very good in this, it was good. I mean, if it was that good, why will it be 28 over in a class of 28? We are not honest in ourselves. We thought we are doing a favor to anybody by calling them that they are good enough to do any practice. Finally, I want to recall, somebody talked about advocacy, I agree with that. One of the people, I mean, even the professor himself, and I will emphasize the fact of relating what we teach in the classroom with our colleagues that are working in practice. Although somebody has debunked that, if they have not got any job since they graduated, what practice are you talking about? But the way we were brought up, fortunately, I would say, unfortunately, I did any of my studies, all the 3 universities I attended were outside here. But I make sure that since I came back, since 1971, we have reinforced that each of our departments of building and related discipline, they relate what we learned so much, and I was a federal government scholar, 1962 to 1963, or whatever it is. The only 2 of us, myself and Professor Mosak, we were the first people to get a federal government scholarship to study building. He ended up at University of Manchester, you missed, I ended up at University of Liverpool, and I have no regret, and I thank the federal government for giving me the kickstart to enable me to come back and add my own little knowledge to what is going on. We have to find a way of implementing our program. Let me just end by saying, Israel, when they started back to come to a place called Israel, they were not building massive housing. Right? They put up 4-story building that contains a minimum of 8 flats. And they say anybody who wants a low income, a house on 1 floor, they should wait or go to the bush several away. Infrastructure will not be done by the government. Go and do it yourself there and live well there. But if you want to live, because we want many of you to come home, you must find a flat, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom inside those 4-story structures where you can now live. If you have lived there for a while, then you can move on. Somebody else can occupy the place because these houses are well built. We cannot afford it. The salary that we earn cannot afford the kind of houses government is trying to build for Nigerians. It's not possible. That we should get that back. If you relate income to the house cost, there is no way you can see any of those edifices that we are putting up now. We must be able to come back home, live according to, look, Volkswagen and those Morris Minors and so on, they carry 5 people. Nothing wrong with them. They were the one they were using in major centers in Nigeria. Why must we import, buildings? Buildings that you yourself, who is riding in it, knows that you are not due to be riding that kind of, buildings. Unfortunately, both the Volkswagen that was established in Lagos, we knew who were the DGs there, and we knew that they didn't achieve much. The Kaduna Bridge did better in terms of, Volkswagen. I'm so sorry to say that. The idea was that over a period of time, we will replace all the components in that building, even the doors, the windows, all those kind of things can be done here. But we lost it. We are coming up, taking building, what you can CKD, they call them, and they come here. Now, I'm not sure what we are producing, whether they are different from the one they are manufactured in France. We should relate the same exercise to building. There is no building that any of us in this room wants to live that Nigeria cannot build. And it is only the fact that if you can use local material, which has been refined by the Building and Road Research Institute here, and use the power of labor, That was why when I started my own PhD program was concentrated on manpower studies. I went to manpower development in the country. They have nothing, no documentation that you can write home about. Only 2 publications, one on roads and one on some few houses which have been built to identify the numbers of people who work on them. It is those people who work on them, the people we cannot produce, that we can do this free. Why do we go to Ghana, Togoland, Benin, to go and hire people that will do that job? Because we are not paying our people well. If you pay them well, they can produce good housing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Let's hear from Professor Akin Doimi.
Well, with all these very brilliant people here, I don't know why. I think I can guess why they thought I should be part of this. I was a servant in NIPS for a couple of years or more. Let's start from where it should be. I think sometimes when we talk about policy, we get it wrong. A statement of policy is a statement of desired goals. I want to achieve this, or I want somebody else to achieve that. That creates a picture in your mind. And the nature of that picture is what creates your procedure, that is your strategy for implementation. Once you have identified that implementation, you have to now see how it works. You need methods, you need progress in attainment, you need to plan, you need legal instruments, you need regulations, you need standards, you need practice codes. Because without those, you cannot really see your way as a channel to the achievement of that goal. That goal, that statement of goal, which is a policy, must not be made discrete. It must be time-bound. By such and such a time, I want this to happen. It must be achievable. There's no point saying you're a Nigerian Institute of Building. By the year 2020, we want to start constructing buildings en masse. It's not achievable. It's a pipe dream. It must be measurable. What quantum do you want? That's what I like about this Empower policy. It tells you how many artisans and craftsmen must be trained in what time and how they must get there. Then you have project vehicles. The project vehicles are there as performance indicators. Because if you don't have performance indicators, you don't know how to go about monitoring. Every strategy for project, policy implementation must have monitoring strategies. Now, having said that, we'll go back to the paper. But before we get to that, I want to give you an example on how policies are created and implemented. In 1967, Lee Kuan Yew separated from Malaysia, separated Singapore from Malaysia. And within the first 6 months, they decided by the year, I think 1990, Singapore must be completely industrialized. And in stating that, they know what they have and what they haven't got. In the first place, they don't have land mass. They don't have any rivers. They don't have any vegetable or any area for agriculture. And yet, they know that they must have certain things to make them industrialized. Some of those things include manufacturing factories, an international standard airport, a university that is heavily technological, a polytechnic that creates not degree holders, but technicians. They knew all of these were components of their strategies. To build Changi Airport, they imported the soil to fill the swamp from Indonesia. Now, for industries, they gave out an invitation to anyone in the whole world who wants to manufacture anything. So come and build your factories in Singapore. But there are conditionalities. One, you will be exempted from taxation for the first 5 years. But 50% of your unskilled laborers must be Singaporeans. We're talking about local content, right? And at least 2 Singaporeans must be on your management team. After 5 years, you start to pay 50% of company tax. And that will last for another 5 years. But as soon as you start paying that, 25% of your managerial staff must be Singaporeans. 100% of your junior staff must be Singaporeans. After 10 years, you pay full tax. All of your senior staff must be Singaporeans, and at least 50% of your board of directors must be Singaporeans. But at this time, you can only export or expatriate only 50% of your profit. After 15 years, you can expatriate what you earn as your share of the company. But then, 52% of the company must belong to Singapore. You can see how it progressively builds up. That's the strategy. Today, Singapore, a small island no bigger than Lagos Island, is not counted as a developing country anymore. Is it? In fact, things have got to a point where even their garbage removal is now done by hydraulic systems. About 2 or 3 years ago, I showed a video of Hotel Marina Singapore to, I think, where was it? Somewhere, to Coping, was it? Yes. You don't accept this, you don't do this by not thinking ahead. You see, we have a problem in Nigeria. We're talking about local content, but where we say Julius Berger is a Nigerian company. Who is fooling who? It's not a Nigerian company, it's a German company operating in Nigeria. That's the truth of it. And there are many of them like that. We complained about this when the purchasing, what they call it, procurement thing was being discussed. And the then DG of procurement bureau said, that's what the World Bank and the multinational companies want, and we better like it or lump it. We've been lumping it since then. Let's look at the question of urban development and housing policies. By the way, Professor, we reviewed the urban development and housing policies in 2012, and we made it more robust. It's one thing to have policies, it's another thing to have usable strategies. We had strategies, but those strategies had not been implemented. The only part of it that got implemented was the development of what we call this ministry. It was then urban development and housing policy ministry. But since then it has been dabarooed. Now it is Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. The environment part of it has been kicked out. It usually gets kicked in and kicked out again. So we lack what we call continuity in policy implementation. Every time a new government or administration comes in, they come in with their preconceived ideas and they abandon what has started, and some of it become waste all over Nigerian landscape. We're talking about policy issues. Policies are meant to last for a long time until we have changes that could change them. Because you have a time factor in establishing for policies. We seem to forget that aspect in our own context. The adoption of policies, they say I should forget speaking anymore. You say it's your fault for having me here. You see, the problem we have is that in the construction industry, there is what we call the professional social engineering policy, which is non-existent. If you get an architect here today, he will tell you he is the boss of the system. It doesn't matter how little he knows. The engineer will also come and say he is the boss of the system, no matter how little he knows. And yet, in other countries, nobody says I'm boss anymore. As far back as the 1960s, the Tavistock Institute says nobody is boss in the construction industry because we are all bosses working together as servants. And unless you have this teamwork, you don't score any goals. And that's why we are scoring own goals in Nigeria. We borrow money from outside, and somebody from outside comes and takes it away in the construction industry. We're talking about policy issues. Which policy are we talking about? The one that we don't implement? Look, I think we better wake up. Thank God, students are there. They should start listening to this kind of thing. We have scored F- in every issue. F-. And some of us who have tried to make us score a little bit more than that, we have been vilified. Cobon in particular have tried and tried and tried. We even started to sneak in what we call Green Building Council, so that other professions will have to come and team up with us and have sustainability in development. They torpedoed it. They said, how could builders come and be leading this kind of thing? It's not a question of whether we were builders. Even though you made it plain to them, they will not accept. We get slaughtered on the butcher's slab of corruption. The National Building Code cannot be implemented because no law implements it. And when you ask them to include a clause in the construction, agreement, to say that everything must obey the building code, so that if it fails, at least somebody can sue for damages, they won't. I'm sorry, I can go on and on, but this guy here says I must stop, so I'm stopping.
I thank the presenter and then the discussants. I think this paper had attracted more contribution than others. We say thank you for listening. We have another paper that should come. Therefore, we say, everybody, thank you very much.
I don't know whether it is by accident that the title policy, whatever came. I think one of the major problems that this policy issue has is that most of our own generation of policies are mostly top-bottom. We don't have bottom-based, bottom-top-based policies. And we need to have what we call participatory broad-based policy development system, rather than the type we have now, so that we will be able to carry everybody along and implement what belongs to us. I think that is where the problem is. I thank all of you that participated in this, and I pray that you go well. Thank you very much. An overview of skills qualification framework for Nigeria. Expectations for quality housing delivery to be delivered by Builder Christopher Belongo. Is he here? Okay. And the discussant is Builder Dr. Didi Jambo, Fellow Nigerian Institute of Building, PPN IOB, and also a lecturer. Thank you very much. And we have the discussants also here. We have the Executive Secretary of NBT, Kaduna. Is he available? Okay. We have DG NDE Abuja, heavily represented by Engineer Adebite S.A. Ziara. Okay. We have Mr. Afolabi Imokwede, SSA to the President of Job Creation and Youth Empowerment. He has always been with us, and we have all heard what he has been doing for us. You are welcome, and also thank you for being patient as we have been keeping you waiting to enjoy some of the policy decisions that we want you to hear, so that you carry there and make it work. Thank you very much, sir. Then we also have Builder Anthony Okwa, Fellow Nigerian Institute of Building, the Chief Executive of System, the anchor of skills development in association with Cobon, Nigerian Institute of Building, and all of us, including Nigerians. Thank you very much. So you're welcome. I think we can, yes.
Separate the wheat from the chaff. When masons and carpenters come to your sites, in the absence of a certificate of competence or proof of competence, how do you determine who you engage or do not engage? That's number one. Number two, when they are in the process of carrying out the work, do you really understand what they are doing from the preparatory stages? I'm putting it to us. We're all colleagues. A lot of us want to carry the title and shy away from the responsibility. We make it look, one of the challenges the artisans have is that they are not proud of the work they are doing. We don't have very much regard for them. And so the system has gone into disarray. We now have attitudinal problems because they see coming onto the construction site just as a way of earning a little quick cash. If they have the opportunity, they would rather go and ride that Okada or Keke Napep. Because of the little regard we have for them. One of the things that the NSQF is doing is to try to give them a structure and indoctrinate them, sow in them attitudes and disposition that will help them with that ladder see the prospects of going up. In as much as I say we ourselves as builders are one of the impediments to the success of the sector, because the truth must be told. When we look at the expatriate-run companies, most of us by now know that they are driven largely by senior experienced artisans. For us, when a plumber is working, we don't know what he's supposed to be doing. So until the building is built and commissioned, and the problems begin to manifest, we have the challenge. So one of the things we've tried to do since we introduced system, and the program, like we are talking about housing, it stems from the fact that when I want to do 10 or 20 houses, I have to build my program. All those fancy bar charts and linear programming you are doing is a waste of time. The critical element, can I get the plumbers that I need? Can I get the tilers? Some of us find that we have to program around these artisans. The man you want to use, that you are sure of his competence, is not available. And when he does, when he is, it costs so much. 90% of our colleagues rely on the artisans to do a substantial part of the work for them. I've gone to sites where the concrete mixer operator is the de facto builder on that site. He determines the mix, the water cement ratio, and he doesn't give a hoot for the kind of water he's using. And somebody is sitting in the office, is the builder in charge, if he's in the office at all. He comes onto site, he doesn't know what is going on. When he opens his mouth, they tell him, oh God, this is how we do it. I can see the hall is quiet. This is what is happening.